The crisp autumn air of Colorado Springs carried a distinct chill. Evelyn Hayes navigated the rental car through familiar streets, a whirlwind of indescribable emotions churning within her. After nearly 3 years away, she was back. Not for a simple leave, but for a special assignment that coincided with her family's Thanksgiving holiday. The silver oak leaf insignia of a lieutenant colonel gleaming on the lapel of her civilian attire seemed to hold little significance here, in this place where she was still just little Evie in her parents' eyes, or her brother's quirky sister. The Hayes family home was as she remembered it, cozy and familiar, yet an invisible wall always seemed to stand between Evelyn and her loved ones. Her father Arthur, a retired civil engineer, always beamed with pride for his eldest son Daniel, a successful entrepreneur in real estate development who had taken over and expanded the family company. Her mother Carol, a woman of traditional values, constantly wished Evelyn would choose a more normal life. A husband, children, a stable job close to home. The door opened. Carol Hayes greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Evie, you made it. Come in, it's freezing out there." No warm embrace, no eager questions about her life or experiences. Just a calm that bordered on indifference. Arthur was watching television in the living room, merely glancing up and nodding as Evelyn entered. "Welcome back." Daniel, her older brother, arrived a few minutes later with his wife and 2 children. He gave her a perfunctory pat on the shoulder. "Hey, sis. Long time no see. Still playing soldier." Evelyn managed a smile. "It's my career, Dan, and I'm dedicated to it." "Sure, whatever floats your boat." Daniel shrugged quickly, turning his attention to his boisterous children. Evelyn's room upstairs was a time capsule of her adolescence. Faded band posters, worn science fiction novels. But prominently displayed on her desk were a few photographs of her with her squadron faces etched with determination. Genuine smiles shared on demanding assignments or during high-stakes training exercises. That was her real world, a world her family seemed unwilling or unable to comprehend. She carefully unpacked her spare service dress uniform from her garment bag, hanging it meticulously in the closet. The Air Force blue uniform, the silver oak leaves of a lieutenant colonel, the rows of service ribbons. They were testaments to years of dedication, of silent sacrifices. But here in this room, they felt like mere pieces of fabric. That evening, the dinner conversation was predictably strained. It revolved around Daniel's business successes, new development projects, and lucrative contracts. Carol endlessly praised her daughter-in-law's homemaking skills and her well-behaved grandchildren. Arthur nodded in approval, his eyes shining with pride. Evelyn sat there an outsider. Her attempts to talk about her work, her experiences in challenging global environments, were either brushed aside or deftly redirected. "Have you thought about a different line of work, Evie?" Carol asked, suddenly breaking Evelyn's silence. "There are good opportunities here. You're not getting any younger. It's time to settle down." Evelyn took a deep breath. "I have a very fulfilling career, Mom. I'm content with it." "Fulfilling." Arthur interjected a hint of skepticism in his voice. "Traipsing all over, always in high-pressure situations. Is that fulfilling?" "Look at your brother. That's success." Evelyn's heart tightened. This indifference, this lack of acknowledgement, stung more than any professional setback. She knew they loved her in their own way, but their way of showing it inadvertently deepened the chasm between them. Sleep eluded Evelyn that night. Memories flooded back as vivid as if they had happened yesterday. She remembered her first day at the Air Force Academy, the awe and pride she felt donning her cadet uniform. The grueling months of training, both physical and mental, had forged her into a different person. Resilient, disciplined, and unwavering. Then came the demanding assignments, overseeing critical aerospace projects, working with cutting-edge satellite technology that had global implications. The pressure was immense, the stakes incredibly high. She had witnessed the dedication of her colleagues, the brilliance of the engineers and scientists she worked with. She had learned the value of teamwork, absolute trust, and extraordinary courage in the face of complex technical and geopolitical challenges. Her chosen field, aerospace engineering and advanced satellite defense systems, was a silent battlefield but no less intense. Countless sleepless nights spent troubleshooting complex systems, intense strategic sessions, planning for contingencies, the successful deployment of critical national security assets. Evelyn had led diverse teams, managed intricate projects, demanding absolute precision and strategic foresight. She had received commendations, service medals, but more important than any accolade was the trust of her superiors and the respect of her peers. She remembered Major Ben Carter, a close friend and colleague lost in a tragic training accident. The ache of that loss still lingered. She remembered the young engineers she had mentored, watching them grow and excel. Their successes were a source of quiet pride. The sacrifices weren't just about long hours and immense responsibility. They were Christmases spent away from home, birthdays marked by a quiet meal in a secure facility, personal relationships strained by the demands of her service. Her family in Colorado Springs probably couldn't fathom the full extent of what she'd experienced, the weight of the responsibilities she carried. To them, the Air Force was still an alien world, the incomprehensible choice of a headstrong daughter. Thanksgiving dinner unfolded much as Evelyn had anticipated. The house buzzed with the laughter of Daniel's family stories of his business ventures and plans for the children's futures. Evelyn tried to engage, sharing a few lighthearted anecdotes about her colleagues, but quickly realized no one was truly listening. "Evelyn, dear," said Aunt Patty, her mother's sister, her voice dripping with overly solicitous concern. "Still haven't found a nice young man. At your age, most of your friends must have families by now." Evelyn smiled politely. "I'm focused on my career, Aunt Patty." "Career schmereer," Uncle Rob, Patty's husband, chimed in. "All that time in the service, when are you going to meet someone decent?" Carol sighed. "I just want you to have a peaceful life, Evie." Daniel looked at his sister, shaking his head. "You need to be more realistic, Eve. The military isn't a place for a woman indefinitely." Their words were like needles pricking at Evelyn's self-esteem. She was accustomed to her family's lack of understanding, but their dismissiveness and prejudice still hurt. They had no idea that her soldiering, as they called it, contributed to their safety, to the security of the nation. They didn't know she held responsibilities few could bear. She looked at the lavish spread on the table but felt no appetite. The roasted turkey, her childhood favorite mashed potatoes, now tasted bland. She felt utterly alone in the midst of her own family. What Evelyn's family didn't know was that her homecoming this time was more than just leave. She was there on a highly classified assignment. The Department of the Air Force was in the final stages of approving a strategic partnership contract for next-generation satellite defense technology and cybersecurity, and the prime contender for a significant subcontract was none other than Hayes Development and Integrated Solutions, HDIS, the company her father had founded and Daniel now ran, which had recently branched into technology solutions. The project was valued at over $2.5 billion, a colossal sum that could transform the company's standing. Evelyn, as one of the Air Force's leading experts in aerospace defense systems and high-tech project management, was tasked with evaluating HDIS's true capabilities and serving as the Air Force's technical liaison during preliminary negotiations. She had maintained absolute secrecy about her role even from her immediate chain of command in Colorado. Only a few key figures at the Pentagon knew the full scope of her mission. Her family certainly could not know. They thought she was some mid-level officer involved in mundane administrative work. Her rank of lieutenant colonel, her achievements were all kept under wraps. She didn't want to use her position to exert pressure or create any bias. More importantly, she wanted to see their genuine reaction when confronted with a completely different Evelyn. During her days at home, she discreetly observed the company's activities from afar, gathering information. She also made time to meet with a few old contacts in the local tech industry. Everything was proceeding according to plan, but the burden of her secret grew heavier each day. The day of the high-level briefing between HDIS leadership and the Department of the Air Force delegation arrived. It was a critical event pivotal for the future of the multi-billion-dollar contract. Daniel had prepared meticulously, exuding confidence. Arthur was also present as the founder and honorary advisor. That morning, Evelyn told her family she had an important meeting and wouldn't be home for lunch. No one asked for details. When Evelyn Hayes walked into the main conference room at Peterson Space Force Base, all eyes turned to her. Not Evie in her simple civilian clothes, but Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn Hayes in her immaculate Air Force service dress uniform, the silver oak leaves of her rank gleaming on her shoulders, her chest adorned with a formidable array of ribbons and medals. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her expressions serious, radiating an aura of quiet confidence and authority. Daniel, who was at this podium beginning his presentation, froze mid-sentence. The glass of water in Arthur's hand trembled. The HDIS board members, who only knew Evelyn through Daniel's dismissive references to his sister in the Air Force, were stunned into silence. A 3-star general, the head of the Air Force delegation, stepped forward and shook Evelyn's hand with respect. "Colonel Hayes, good to have you here." "General," Evelyn replied, her voice clear and steady. "The honor is mine." The atmosphere in the conference room became thick with unspoken questions. Shock, disbelief, and a touch of bewilderment were evident on the faces of her father and brother. The daughter, the sister they had always underestimated, even somewhat dismissed, now appeared in a capacity they could never have imagined. Evelyn calmly walked to the table reserved for the Air Force delegation, her gaze sweeping briefly over her father and brother. No explanation, no superfluous gestures. Her presence in that uniform was the most eloquent statement. The briefing proceeded in an atmosphere of almost unbearable tension. Evelyn, in her role as the delegation's lead technical expert and aerospace systems advisor, asked sharp, incisive questions directly addressing HDIS's capabilities and technological solutions. She showed no favoritism. On the contrary, her professionalism and rigorous scrutiny put Daniel and his team under considerable pressure. Arthur sat in the guest section, his face alternating between flushed and pale. He couldn't believe his eyes. The daughter he had always considered somewhat adrift without a real future was now an Air Force lieutenant colonel, an expert respected by a 3-star general. After the briefing, as the Air Force delegation withdrew for internal discussions, Daniel found Evelyn in the corridor. His face was still a mask of shock. "Evie, what is all this?" Daniel stammered. You're a lieutenant colonel." "That's correct, Dan," Evelyn replied, her voice calm. "This is my job. Why didn't you ever tell us the family?" "Tell you what, so everyone could continue comparing me to you, or so I could hear more advice about finding a safer job." A deep sadness flickered in Evelyn's eyes. "I've grown accustomed to not being recognized." Arthur approached his expression a mixture of emotions. "Evelyn, your father—" "I don't want any explanations right now." "Dad," Evelyn interrupted gently but firmly. "What matters is the work. Whether your and Dan's company is truly capable of handling this project, that's my concern." The confrontation didn't end there. That evening at home, a major argument erupted. Carol wept, accusing Evelyn of deceiving the family. Daniel felt betrayed by his sister's secrecy. Arthur was silent, but his inner turmoil was palpable. "I didn't deceive anyone," Evelyn stated, her voice rising for the first time, allowing her emotions to show so strongly. "I just didn't want my position to influence anyone's decisions or to become a topic for family gossip and judgment. I've worked hard. I've sacrificed a great deal to get where I am today. I don't need pity. I need respect. Evelyn's blunt words were like a splash of cold water on the entire family. For the first time, they truly saw a different Evelyn. A strong, independent woman with undeniable achievements. In the days that followed, the tension in the Hayes household remained, but subtle changes began to occur. Arthur started researching Evelyn's field reading articles about aerospace defense and national security. Carol stopped mentioning settling down, replacing it with hesitant questions about Evelyn's life in the Air Force. Daniel underwent the most noticeable transformation. The events at the briefing had forced him to completely reevaluate his younger sister. He began to respect her professional opinions, even proactively seeking her out to discuss technical aspects of the company's bid. During subsequent meetings with the Department of the Air Force, Evelyn maintained her professional and objective stance. She impartially pointed out HDIS's strengths and weaknesses. Her forthrightness and competence impressed both sides. Finally, after numerous rounds of rigorous evaluations and intense negotiations, the multi-billion-dollar contract was awarded. HDIS had proven its capabilities thanks in no small part to the exacting standards and guidance Evelyn had provided. The day Evelyn was due to leave Colorado Springs and return to her duties, the entire family came to the airport to see her off. The indifference and coolness from her arrival were gone. Arthur hugged his daughter tightly. "I'm proud of you, Evelyn. So incredibly proud." Carol's eyes were red-rimmed. "Take care of yourself, dear." Daniel shook his sister's hand. "Thank you, Evie, for everything." It wasn't a complete transformation, not a fairy tale ending. The differences the past hurt still lingered. But a new door had opened, a door to understanding and respect. Her family had finally begun to see her for who she was and what she had achieved, not through the lens of their preconceived notions or imposed expectations. Returning to the demanding rhythm of her work, Evelyn faced new challenges. The Aegis Sky project with HDIS as a key subcontractor was just one of many critical responsibilities she shouldered. National cybersecurity and aerospace defense were becoming increasingly complex, the threats more sophisticated. The pressure of her duties was immense. However, the acknowledgement from her family, however belated, provided a significant source of motivation. She no longer felt quite so alone in her endeavors. She knew that somewhere loved ones were beginning to understand and feel proud of her. She maintained regular contact with her family. The calls were no longer filled with unsolicited advice, but with genuine sharing and sincere inquiries. Daniel occasionally called for her technical insights. Arthur enthusiastically updated her on the company's progress with the Air Force contract. Evelyn realized that balancing her career and family was an ongoing journey. She couldn't completely change her parents' expectations, nor could she abandon her passion and duty to her country. But she could learn to communicate better, share more, and find common ground. She began to open up more to her family, telling them about different facets of her work, the joys, the challenges, the incredible colleagues she worked with. She also took the time to learn about their lives, their worries, and their joys. The relationship between her and Daniel also gradually improved. They found mutual respect based on each other's capabilities and accomplishments. Years later, Evelyn continued to serve with distinction in the Air Force, achieving new milestones. She became a role model for many young service members, especially women in STEM fields. Most importantly, she found an inner peace. She was no longer haunted by the need for others' approval because she had validated her own worth. She knew who she was, what she wanted, and what she was fighting for. Her family in Colorado Springs, while still holding on to some traditions, had a completely transformed view of their lieutenant colonel daughter and sister. They were proud of her not just for her rank or the billion-dollar projects, but for her character, her perseverance, and her self-respect. Evelyn Hayes had proven that true success is not measured by preconceived notions or favoritism, but by one's own competence, dedication, and the courage to stand firm in one's identity, even in the face of indifference from those closest. Her journey was a testament to the power of self-affirmation and never giving up on one's dreams. She had truly risen from her personal challenges strong and free.